It was a crisp, sunlit morning in October of 1974, and Maplewood High School buzzed with the usual chaos of a mid-sized American town. Students hustled through the hallways, backpacks bouncing on their shoulders, sneakers squeaking against the linoleum floors. Teachers shuffled through stacks of papers and coffee cups, calling out last-minute reminders about homework and upcoming quizzes. On the surface, it seemed like any other ordinary day, the kind of day where nothing extraordinary ever happens. But behind the cheerful chatter and ringing bells, something ominous was quietly stirring in room 12B, a classroom that would soon become the center of a mystery that would haunt the town for decades. Mr. Harold Greene, the 42-year-old history teacher with a reputation for both strict discipline and an unexpectedly dry sense of humor, was already in the room when the students arrived. His routine was precise, almost ritualistic. First a quick glance at the attendance sheet, then organizing his lecture notes on the wooden podium, and finally, meticulously wiping the chalkboard clean before the first lesson began. Emily Carter, a 15-year-old sophomore known for her curiosity and sharp mind, entered the classroom carrying her notebook and a pencil tucked behind her ear. She waved to Mr. Greene, who nodded in acknowledgement, his expression unusually serious that morning. No one could have predicted that their ordinary interaction would mark the last time anyone would see them for years. As the clock approached 9:05 a.m., the students settled into their desks, some chatting quietly, others tapping nervously on the table as if anticipating the start of something important. Mr. Greene began his lecture, discussing the American Revolution with a passion that often drew students in, his voice clear, steady, and authoritative. But within the first few minutes, Emily began scribbling something unusual in her notebook, glancing occasionally at the teacher with what appeared to be a mix of excitement and apprehension. There was an air of normalcy, yes, but also something subtly different, a tension that even the most oblivious students seemed to sense but could not explain. Outside the classroom, the school carried on as usual. Hall monitors directed students to their next classes, the cafeteria filled with the aroma of sizzling bacon and fresh coffee, and the janitor hummed a familiar tune while mopping the floors. But within room 12B, time seemed to bend slightly, an unseen weight pressed against the walls, as if the room itself were holding its breath. The soft rustle of papers, the distant murmur of voices in the hall, even the faint ticking of the clock seemed amplified, drawing attention to the mundane details that would later be scrutinized for hidden clues. Something about that day felt suspended, a quiet tension that hinted at the extraordinary event about to unfold. By the time the bell rang for the next period, something strange had already taken root. Students noticed that Mr. Greene and Emily seemed unusually focused, almost detached from the world around them. Some tried to get their attention as the lunch bell echoed through the hallways, but their calls went unanswered. The door to the classroom, normally a portal to the bustling world beyond, now felt like a barrier, a threshold separating the ordinary from the unexplainable. In hindsight, it was the first sign that the day was far from ordinary, and that room 12B held secrets that would remain locked away for decades, waiting to be unearthed. By late morning, whispers began to ripple through Maplewood High. Students who had gone to other classes noticed something odd. Room 12B remained strangely quiet. Usually, the sound of Mr. Greene's lectures or the soft shuffle of papers would spill into the hallway, but now there was nothing. At first, people assumed the teacher and Emily had stepped out for a moment, perhaps to visit the principal or the restroom. But as the minutes stretched into an hour, unease began to creep into the minds of students and staff alike. Something about the silence felt unnatural, almost deliberate. Concern grew when the janitor, Harold Jenkins, tried to check on the classroom around midday. He approached the familiar wooden door, expecting the usual creak and warm smell of chalk and old books, but froze in disbelief when he found it locked from the inside. Jenkins rattled the doorknob, jiggled the key, even tried the spare set from the office, but nothing worked. The lock was stubborn, almost impenetrable, as if it had been reinforced by some force beyond human understanding. Panic quietly began to simmer, a feeling that would only escalate as the hours passed and no one could enter. News of the locked door reached the school principal, who immediately called the sheriff's office. Deputies arrived within the hour, bringing crowbars, lock picks, and a determination to get to the bottom of this strange predicament. They tried every method, from picking the lock to forcing the hinges, but the door wouldn't budge. Outside, a growing crowd of students gathered, craning their necks and murmuring in anxious tones. Parents were notified, and soon reporters began to arrive, sensing a story far beyond the typical high school drama. Yet, inside, the classroom appeared untouched, desks perfectly aligned, chalkboard clean, sunlight filtering lazily through the windows. It was as if the room itself was alive, holding back its secret. As hours turned into a tense afternoon, speculation ran wild. Some students whispered about supernatural forces or curses, recalling old local legends of haunted hallways and mysterious disappearances in Maplewood decades earlier. Others tried to rationalize it, perhaps a prank, or a clever scheme by Mr. Greene to make a point about discipline. But even the most skeptical could not explain the door's impossible lock or the eerie stillness that hung like a thick fog in the corridor. Teachers tried to keep students calm, but the unease was contagious. The hallway that had been filled with laughter and chatter now echoed with tension and dread. By the evening, the locked classroom had become the epicenter of a growing mystery that the town could not ignore. The sheriff's department set up watches around the room, and curious townspeople began to gather outside the school, craning to see the impossible. The more people speculated, the more the mystery seemed to deepen. What force had trapped them inside? Was there a hidden mechanism, a secret passage, or something far stranger at work? The questions multiplied, but the answers remained sealed, locked behind that stubborn door, a barrier between the ordinary world and an unimaginable truth waiting to be discovered. As word of the mysterious disappearance spread through Maplewood, the school quickly became a hive of confusion, fear, and relentless curiosity. Parents arrived in droves, demanding answers, their voices echoing through the hallways, while students clung to each other, whispering theories that ranged from plausible to absurd. The principal, overwhelmed and visibly shaken, coordinated with local authorities, providing what little information he could. But the more questions he answered, the more unsettling the situation became. The locked door, the silence, the absence of any trace of Mr. Greene and Emily. It was a puzzle that defied logic. Sheriff Tom Wallace, a veteran officer known for his level-headed approach, led the initial investigation. He examined the classroom with meticulous care, documenting every detail, from the alignment of the desks to the position of the chalkboard erasers. Yet nothing seemed amiss. No signs of struggle, no unusual marks, no footprints outside the room or hallways. The lock showed no signs of tampering. It was as if the teacher and student had vanished into thin air, leaving the room itself untouched. Every new discovery, or lack thereof, only deepened the sense of dread hanging over Maplewood High. As hours passed, state police joined the investigation, bringing advanced equipment to scan the building for hidden passages or structural anomalies. Dogs were brought in to trace scents, and forensic teams swept every inch of the room, yet each effort led to dead ends. The school's janitor, who had known Mr. Greene for years, was questioned extensively, as were every student who had attended 12B that morning. Everyone reported the same thing: an ordinary day, an ordinary class, and then nothing. No one could account for the sudden disappearance. The impossible nature of the event left even seasoned officers whispering that they had never encountered anything like it. By the second day, the media had descended on Maplewood. News vans lined the streets, camera crews jostled for a clear shot of the mysterious classroom door, and journalists interviewed anxious parents and terrified students. The story went national, painting a picture of a quiet Ohio town shaken to its core. Headlines screamed about the vanishing teacher and student, while late-night talk shows speculated on theories ranging from abduction to supernatural intervention. The investigation, once local and controlled, had now become a spectacle, with pressure mounting on authorities to solve a mystery that seemed entirely unsolvable. Despite the growing scrutiny, investigators began noticing small, inexplicable details that only heightened the unease. A faint smell of chalk lingered in the hallways even after the room had been locked for hours. Some students claimed to hear soft murmurs when standing outside the classroom door, though no one inside could respond. Teachers swore that shadows flickered unnaturally across the floor, and a few even reported that the sunlight streaming through the windows seemed to bend oddly, creating shapes that were not quite real. Each of these minor anomalies, when taken together, hinted at something far beyond a simple disappearance, a mystery that was about to reach deeper into the fabric of Maplewood itself. In the days following the disappearance, Room 12B began to develop a reputation that made even the bravest students and teachers uneasy. Rumors spread quickly, whispers of strange noises, flickering lights, and cold drafts that seemed to originate from the locked classroom itself. Hallways that had once been filled with laughter now felt haunted, as if the building itself were aware of the secret trapped behind that stubborn wooden door. Students passing by would sometimes stop mid-step, frozen by the sensation that someone, or something, was watching them from within. The first reports were subtle, almost dismissible. Teachers claimed to hear faint scratching against the walls, like fingernails dragged across wood, when no one was there. Students swore they saw shadows moving across the windows late in the afternoon, even when the room appeared empty. Some described seeing objects subtly out of place, a desk shifted slightly, a chalk smudge appearing on the board that hadn't been there before. At first, skeptics assumed it was imagination running wild, heightened by fear and the excitement of the town's growing obsession with the case. But as the occurrences increased in frequency and intensity, even the most rational minds began to worry. One night, custodian Harold Jenkins returned to the school to finish some after-hours work. As he approached room 12B, he felt a sudden chill sweep through the hallway, far colder than the autumn air outside. The floorboards creaked unnaturally, echoing in the silence, and for a moment, he swore he heard a whisper, faint, almost pleading, coming from behind the locked door. Jenkins froze, heart pounding, unable to explain what he had heard. He tried to convince himself it was just his imagination, but the lingering chill and the echo of that whisper refused to be ignored. Even the walls seemed to hum with a quiet, malevolent energy that made the air thick and heavy. As the weeks went by, more students came forward with similar experiences. Some reported feeling sudden nausea or dizziness when passing the room, while others claimed to have seen fleeting glimpses of figures, a teacher and a student, standing silently inside the classroom, their faces blurred, their presence fleeting as a shadow. Teachers who dared to check the room for themselves often described a sense of vertigo or a deep, inexplicable unease, as if the classroom existed slightly out of sync with reality. The locked door, once simply a barrier, had become a threshold to something unknowable, an invitation to fear itself. Even the local townspeople began noticing odd occurrences beyond the school walls. Residents reported hearing faint echoes of voices coming from the direction of Maplewood High late at night. Some claimed their dogs would bark relentlessly near the building, refusing to enter the schoolyard, while others said electronic devices flickered or malfunctioned when they approached the mysterious classroom. The more people tried to explain it logically, the more impossible it became. Room 12B had transformed from a simple classroom into a locus of inexplicable phenomena, a place where reality itself seemed to bend and whisper secrets no one was meant to uncover. Half a century later, in 2024, Maplewood High had changed almost beyond recognition. The school had been renovated multiple times, with modern classrooms, new hallways, and updated security systems. But Room 12B had remained largely untouched, a relic of the past, sealed off and whispered about as the haunted classroom. When the school board decided to finally renovate the oldest wing, a construction crew was brought in to replace old floors, remove outdated walls, and update wiring. What they discovered behind the decades-old chalkboard would shock everyone, and reopen wounds that had been buried for 50 years. The workers had barely started removing panels when they noticed something odd, a small seam in the wall that didn't match the standard construction. Curious, they carefully pried it open, revealing a hidden compartment, long forgotten and coated in layers of dust. Inside were items preserved in near-perfect condition despite the decades: Mr. Greene's leather-bound journal, Emily Carter's neatly kept notebook, and a small wooden box containing rusted keys and yellowed papers. The discovery sent shivers down the spines of the construction team. Even after 50 years, it was clear that someone had deliberately concealed these items, leaving behind a carefully curated record of something that no one outside Room 12B had ever been meant to see. As news of the discovery spread, Maplewood residents flooded back to the school to witness the unearthing of this long-hidden secret. Investigators and historians carefully examined the journals, flipping through pages filled with meticulous handwriting, diagrams, and cryptic annotations. Emily's notebook, still bearing the delicate strokes of a teenager's pen, contained anxious musings and cautious observations, hinting at something that had frightened her even at the time. The wooden box, meanwhile, held small brass keys, some labeled in ways that made little sense, and fragments of paper with symbols and strange, arcane markings. Each new discovery added to the sense of unease. These were not just the belongings of a teacher and student, but pieces of a puzzle that had been deliberately hidden from the world. The content of the journals suggested that Mr. Greene had been involved in experiments that blurred the line between science and something far darker. He described nights spent in the classroom after hours, performing calculations, observing patterns, and conducting tests that Emily had documented with a mixture of fear and fascination. There were references to portals, temporal boundaries, and doors beyond sight, hinting that their disappearance had not been accidental, but part of an ambitious and terrifying experiment. Emily's entries revealed hesitation, guilt, and a desperate hope that nothing irreversible would occur, providing the first glimpse into the human side of a mystery that had haunted the town for generations. The discovery of the compartment reignited old questions that had long been considered impossible to answer. How had Mr. Greene and Emily disappeared without leaving a trace? What had been the purpose of these secret experiments? And most importantly, what did the journals mean by warnings about crossing boundaries that should never be crossed? Every piece of evidence suggested that the truth was far stranger than anyone had imagined, and that Room 12B had been a silent witness to events beyond comprehension. For Maplewood, the discovery was more than just a historical curiosity. It was proof that the past had been holding onto a secret, waiting patiently for the right moment to reveal itself. As the journals were examined, it became clear that Mr. Greene's writings were far from ordinary. The pages were filled with a meticulous mix of history lessons, scientific notes, and arcane diagrams that hinted at something beyond traditional education. One entry described the classroom itself as a gateway, a term that immediately raised eyebrows among investigators and historians alike. Mr. Greene wrote about experimenting with patterns of light, sound, and human perception, claiming that under precise conditions, reality could be bent, and the boundaries between time and space blurred. Emily's notes, carefully interleaved with his, reflected both awe and fear. She was fascinated by the discoveries but increasingly worried about their consequences. The journals revealed late-night experiments that had been conducted in secret. Mr. Greene often wrote of arranging objects in precise geometric patterns, drawing symbols on the chalkboard, and monitoring how Emily's reactions to the exercises changed over time. Some pages contained sketches that resembled maps of the classroom itself, annotated with cryptic symbols and notes about energy flows and temporal nodes. Emily's handwriting became more frantic as the entries progressed, documenting strange sensations she experienced: dizziness, blurred vision, even fleeting glimpses of shadows that seemed to move independently. Her words hinted at the classroom becoming something alive, something aware of their presence. Investigators were particularly struck by one chilling passage where Mr. Greene wrote, "If the experiment succeeds, the observer may step beyond known reality. If it fails, they may never return. We are venturing where no mind has ever walked." The entry was dated just a day before their disappearance. Emily's accompanying notes admitted that she was unsure of what would happen but felt compelled to follow his instructions. The combination of scientific terminology with almost ritualistic procedures gave the impression that what occurred in Room 12B was neither fully scientific nor fully supernatural. It was something terrifyingly in between. As experts pored over the pages, they noticed that certain passages were deliberately erased or overwritten, as if Mr. Greene anticipated that someone might one day discover the journals. Some symbols seemed to align with the placement of desks and objects in the room, hinting at a hidden system or mechanism embedded in the classroom itself. Emily's notes frequently mentioned auditory phenomena, faint humming, whispers, and echoes that seemed to originate from the walls, and described them growing more intense during the final hours before their disappearance. These clues suggested that whatever force or experiment had taken hold of Room 12B had been building up over time, becoming something impossible to contain. The more investigators read, the more unnerving it became. Mr. Greene's writings were not just a record of events but a roadmap, a warning encoded in meticulous detail. References to doors, loops, and boundaries crossed indicated that the disappearance was no accident. It had been a calculated attempt to explore unknown dimensions of reality. Emily's fearful observations provided a human perspective, revealing just how powerless they had been in the face of forces they could not fully comprehend. Every page turned, every symbol decoded, made it painfully clear that Room 12B had been more than a classroom. It had been a stage for an experiment that may have trapped them in a realm outside normal perception, leaving behind a mystery that still defied explanation. When news of the hidden compartment and the journal's contents broke, Maplewood was thrown into a frenzy. The town that had long whispered about Room 12B now found itself at the center of national attention. Residents poured into the streets, many standing outside the school, craning their necks to catch a glimpse of the infamous classroom. Local news vans lined the main avenue, while reporters interviewed parents, teachers, and former students who still remembered the morning Mr. Greene and Emily vanished. Excitement mingled with fear, and the town seemed to hum with a nervous energy, as if the long-dormant secret had awakened something that refused to stay hidden. Experts and paranormal investigators descended on Maplewood, each offering a different interpretation of the events. Some dismissed it as an elaborate hoax, the product of decades-old urban legend exaggerated over time. Others speculated that the journals were evidence of a genuine supernatural occurrence, that Mr. Greene and Emily had crossed a threshold no human was meant to cross. Residents who had been children in 1974 shared chilling recollections of strange noises, flickering shadows, and feelings of unease in the hallway near room 12B. Each story, though fragmented and subjective, painted a picture of a classroom that had been alive with an unnatural presence long before the hidden compartment was discovered. The town's historians began examining old records, searching for anything that could shed light on the mystery. They found inconsistencies in the daily logs from 1974, gaps in attendance records, unexplained reports of strange behavior from other students, and references to incidents that had been quietly dismissed at the time. Some elders recalled rumors of late-night experiments conducted in the classroom, whispered warnings from teachers who had quietly feared Mr. Greene's curiosity. It became increasingly clear that room 12B had not just been a backdrop to ordinary lessons. It had been the setting for events that defied explanation, and for decades, the town had been only partially aware of its own dark history. Even the modern students of Maplewood High felt the tension. Some refused to pass by room 12B at all, claiming the air around it felt heavy, almost suffocating. Others reported faint whispers or fleeting shadows when near the classroom, reminiscent of the stories from 50 years ago. Paranormal investigators set up cameras and sensors, hoping to capture evidence of the phenomena described in the journals. But the recordings were inconclusive. Strange distortions and fleeting anomalies appeared intermittently, never providing a clear picture. Yet, every unexplained sound, every shadow, only fueled the belief that room 12B was more than just bricks and chalkboards. It was a threshold to something far beyond ordinary comprehension. As debates raged in town halls, on local radio, and in online forums that had recently taken notice, Maplewood found itself struggling to reconcile the ordinary with the extraordinary. Parents worried about the safety of their children, teachers pondered the ethics of Mr. Greene's actions, and the community at large wondered whether the events of 1974 had truly ended, or if the classroom still held secrets too dangerous to uncover. Every new visitor, every new theory, seemed to amplify the feeling that room 12B was watching, waiting, holding its secret close, and that the disappearance of Mr. Greene and Emily was only the beginning of a story that had yet to be fully told. Even today, room 12B remains sealed. The hidden compartment, the journals, and the cryptic warnings have all been catalogued and studied, yet no one has come close to fully understanding what happened to Mr. Greene and Emily Carter. Some experts suggest they may have been trapped in a dimension beyond our perception, lost in time or space. Others warn that the classroom itself may still hold the same power, a silent observer of reality, waiting for the next moment someone dares to uncover its secrets. Visitors who stand outside the door report an unsettling feeling, a cold pressure against their chest, and the faintest whisper of a voice just beyond comprehension. Those who peer through the old, dusty windows swear they see shadows moving, fleeting glimpses of a teacher and a student, watching silently, trapped but aware. It's as if room 12B remembers everything, holding fast to the mystery, refusing to give up its secrets to the world. The journals remain preserved, a haunting record of curiosity, ambition, and the dangers of venturing too far beyond the known. Emily's fearful handwriting, Mr. Greene's meticulous notes, and the strange symbols etched into the pages all point to the same terrifying truth. The classroom was never ordinary, and its secrets were never meant to be uncovered. Maplewood has moved on in many ways, but the story lingers. Every new student passing by the corridor, every construction worker or historian who dares to explore, feels the weight of history pressing down, a reminder that some doors, once closed, should remain that way. And as the sun sets over the town, casting long shadows across the school's empty hallways, one question remains. Will room 12B ever give up its secret, or will it continue to guard the fate of those who vanished 50 years ago?
If you liked this video, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Most importantly, subscribe and hit the bell icon so the next secret finds you first.